Hi everyone, welcome back to English 112. This is for our class for Tuesday, the 25th. And we have a catch-up class today, which is exactly what it sounds like, a class that's devoted to catching up. As you know, our journal for our three dramas, which happens to be Oedipus, Midsummer Night's Dream, and Raisin in the Sun, is due today if you are watching this video on the 25th, Tuesday, at 11:59 p.m. via PDF to my email, which is ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu. As you know, I am evaluating these journals informally. I see them as a kind of conversation on paper where you can put down reflections, thoughts, questions, anticipating about a page or so for each of the dramas. So about a page for Oedipus the King, a page for Midsummer Night's Dream, and about a page or so for A Raisin in the Sun. And I'm hopeful that this kind of conversation on paper, which I evaluate informally on a checkmark system, might help inspire you as to how to proceed with your paper. Your second paper, which is going to be due on drama, will be due on the 9th of May, which is a Thursday. And it will be approximately 4 to 5 pages, much like paper number 1. It will also be a critical paper, much like paper number 1. The difference being that rather than talking about short story, you are writing about drama. And in terms of putting some closure onto our drama unit, that's what today's attendance question is going to be. And it will be due on the 27th, which is Thursday, at noon. And of course, you're not required necessarily to respond to your classmates, but you are required to read your classmates' responses and my responses in turn. And I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of historical research during this catch-up class. So I'm going to ask you to look up information about the culture and time period for one of the three plays that we read. So for Oedipus the King, that would be 430 BC Greece. For Midsummer Night's Dream, that would be approximately 1595 England. And for Raisin in the Sun, that would be 1959 United States, Chicago to be exact. And to see, as you review this information, if you can find 2 or 3 pieces of information that help you understand the play, talking about what those pieces of information are and how those pieces of information help you get a better understanding of what was happening during the play itself. And of course, I suspect that the class will divide up so that some of you will talk about Oedipus and some of you will talk about Midsummer and some of you will talk about Raisin. So at the ending of this exercise, we should have a nice overview of the cultures and time periods that we've been discussing over the course of the drama unit. And you can spend as much or as little time as you like on this assignment. Usually when I do it in class, I give students approximately a half hour so that they can poke around and do a little bit of research. And then the rest of the class would be devoted to thinking about paper number 2. And I have some suggested paper topics in our syllabus and other documents folder. They're merely suggestions. And at this point, what I hope and what I anticipate is that you are done reading all 3 dramas, as well as seeing performances for all 3 dramas, so that we can prepare to move forward to our next unit, which happens to be poetry. And at the ending of the poetry unit, you will have a journal, much like you've had a journal for short story and for drama. But there won't be time for you to write a paper on poetry. But instead, what you will be doing is taking a final exam. And the bulk of that final will be devoted to poetry, where I will select a handful of poems and that we've covered in class and ask you to talk about 2 and to analyze them in depth. It'll be open book, open notes. That'll be the bulk of the exam. That'll be 80 points. So the remainder, the 20 points left over, 10 points would be for a short story. I'll give you a couple of questions on short story and ask you to choose one and write a brief response. And I'll do the same for drama as well. That would be for 100 points. So I'll talk some more about the final once we move into the poetry section. So That said, I'm going to leave you so that you could do a little bit of historical research. I know that more often than not, what people do is they go immediately online and they go to one of the first hits that Google provides them with, or they go to Wikipedia. I'm not necessarily averse to either one of those, but might I suggest those are not the most effective ways for finding information. Remember that as a GCC student, you have access to the GCC library system, which means you have access to the databases of our library system, something which is not available to the general public because it's subscription only, but your tuition dollars help to pay for your subscription. What that allows you to do is to conduct electronic searches through the GCC library system of information that already has been reviewed. So there's a certain level of authenticity and a certain level of validity with these pieces of information in a way that you wouldn't find in the wide open net. Again, I'm not necessarily averse to you using the wide open net, but understand that you've got lots of wonderful resources at your fingertips as a student. And if you were to go onto the GCC website and click under the database link, you'll see that there are quite a few databases. Some are very specialized and some are very general. And I always, at this point in the semester, think about, and I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, a distinction I heard from someone years ago, the difference between being on the wide open internet as opposed to being on a database. And they likened it to unsafe and safe sex. That being on the open internet was basically unsafe sex. And being on a database was the equivalent of safe sex, in that yes, if you are on a database or engaging in safe sex, something could go wrong, but it's highly unlikely. As opposed to being on the open internet or engaging in unsafe sex, the percentages increase dramatically of something going wrong. So I always think about that when it comes to research. At any rate, I leave you to thinking about paper number 2 and contemplating some ideas, as well as doing some historical research. And perhaps that research will help you decide what you want to focus your paper on. And as I indicated, next class, we will talk about poetry. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. And we will continue on next class. Take care. Bye-bye.